Now Nottingham, a famous area of sport, not just for cricket, but of course home of Nottingham Forest. Notts County, by the way, is just down the road. There's the National Water Sports Centre and of course racing if you want a better too. Trent Bridge though, one of the nicest grounds that you visit during the season, and of course always a big game. I wonder who'll be celebrating in the Trent Bridge Inn, the Radcliffe Road, a famous area where the bowlers will be coming in from. So Notts County Cricket Club, the scene of Yorkshire's next encounter after that dramatic victory over Worcestershire. You can always hear and see the hover cover and of course the players out in the nets early doors on this Sunday morning. Philander, one of the new men of course of the Notts scene, they've got several new players in their lineup, and it was welcome back Andrew Gale after that suspension. At last it's over. And yes, Gailey, you've called right in this one, and Yorkshire have decided to bowl. That after the success, of course, of the team at Worcester. They've made a change with Matthew Fisher coming in, and Andrew Gale replaces the injured Ryan Sidebottom. Here's the umpires on their way, a decent crowd building up to welcome Gailey and his lads onto the field. And a big day for young Fisher at 17 years, 161 days. The openers for Notts, Stephen Mullaney and the informed Brendan Taylor, newcomer to Notts, but he's been playing well. Well, Tim Bresnan opened up with an eventful first over. He was convinced he had Mullaney caught behind from the third ball, but umpire Rob Bailey disagreed. Mullaney then got off the mark and Brendan Taylor got underway with a nice shot through mid-wicket. Mullaney brought up the first four with a flick down to fine leg. The Notts opening pair, it's fair to say, had some anxious moments, but anything loose was put away. Steve Patterson came on as first change and produced a ball through the backward point to get another boundary off Bresnan to make up for the lack of runs off Patterson, who started with two maidens, and it was the Beverley-born Patterson who grabbed the first wicket. Well, he's been in superb form, hasn't he? Mullaney trapped WW for 27 after nearly 45 minutes at the wicket. Not at this stage, by the way, 37 for 1. New batsman Alex Hales found the boundary with a cover drive off Patterson, and then the informed Jack Brooks replaced Bresnan from the pavilion end, and a towering bouncer beat everybody with 4 byes, bringing up the 50 for Notts. Patterson found the edge of Brendan Taylor's bat, but rather than going to hand, the ball sped to the third man boundary. Now the introduction of debutant Matthew Fisher brought a wicket. He found the edge of Brendan Taylor's bat, and this time it went into the bucket-like hands of Alex Lees, an excellent slip catch. Brendan Taylor gone for 27, Notts 77 for 2. But not the end of Taylor, because the new batsman is James Taylor, brought up his third boundary with a leg side 4 down to find out umpire up. Bresnan was then brought back into the attack and James Taylor played him away for 4, followed by 2 runs as Notts closed in on their 100. Matt Fisher continued to impress, but Alex Hales hit him firmly for the offside for 4. The 100 came up with a fierce cover drive from Hales after a loose delivery from new bowler Will Rhodes, and Hales then cut the same bowler to the boundary from the next delivery. At lunch then, fairly even contest. Notts 105 for 2 from 32 overs, Hales on 30, and James Taylor is 11. The afternoon session opened with 8 conceded from the first over as Notts moved to 113 for 2. After that, James Taylor played a fine shot through the leg side to take a 4 off Patterson, and Hales guided Patterson through the slips for 2 runs down to third man. A further 2 from the leg side from Hales brought up the 50 partnership. Now runs started to come with a flourish from the pair, and Alex Hales brought up his 50 with his 7th boundary. A risky cut from James Taylor produced a 4 through point off Brooks. Hales also found the boundary off Brooks and got a little piece of wood on the next bouncer, which again went for 4 over the top of Andy Hard. Jack Leaning was brought onto the attack and the spinner was hit by the boundary twice by Hales in an over. The Notts batsman now stepped to the gear and the 100 partnership came up with a single to Hales. Taylor, with good use of the bottom hand, hit Leaning for a boundary and Hales deposited the spinner for a huge straight 6. Hales was closing in on his century. He reached it with a back foot boundary off Fisher. 16 fours and 1 6 in that. He played really well. But he did have a lucky let-off soon afterward. In fact, twice as he edged Fisher through the slips for a boundary, very close to a catch. And he went through the slip cordon again off the same bowler to get a lucky 4. But despite that little bit of lady luck, Hales was motoring, and he blasted Fisher through mid-wicket for another 4. James Taylor then hit his half-century with his 9th boundary. Yorkshire were badly in need of a breakthrough, and it came with a score on 248. Jack Brooks having a great start to the season, trapped Taylor, LBW for 59, to end that partnership with 171 for the 3rd wicket. New man Samit Patel produced a boundary to bring up to 250, that's a second batting bonus point. But then further joy for Yorkshire as Brooks produced a lifting delivery which was edged by Patel to slip, and another excellent Lee's catch. Hales, though, continued to pepper the ropes, and he went to 135 with another offside 4 from the bowling of Brooks. At tea, Notts 281 for 4, Hales 141, Ricky Vessels on 6. A tough session this for the Tykes, with 176 runs conceded for just 2 wickets. Alex Hales continued to dominate in the early stages, and 2 back-to-back boundaries off Brooks brought up his 150, 25 fours and 1 6. Hales then brought up the 300 with a loose delivery from Fisher, ending up at the square leg boundary. For a time the score was stifled, but then Hales cut loose again with another 4 off Fisher, and Vessels followed suit with another boundary for a backward point. But then some joy for Yorkshire as Vessels departed, caught a slip by Jack Leaning off Rhodes for 18, Notts 324 for 5. To their credit, Yorkshire began to quell the runs for a time in this session, but Hales was still able to find gaps, and with skipper Chris Reed they continued to pick up useful runs for their side. But Bresnan was able to get his first wicket in the match and in the session as he accounted for Reed out LBW for 7, Notts 344 for 6. Hales hit Patterson for a straight 4 to go to a career best. Added to that another batting bonus point to the bargain. And another glorious straight drive off Patterson for 4 took him to 190. Soon afterwards, he reached his first career double 100 with 33 fours and a 6. He continued to dominate. Just before the end, Patterson removed Gidman in the final over, and Patterson had bowled well along with young Matthew Fisher. But a tough day at the office for the champions. We have to say, though, well played Alex Hales, 222 not out. Notts 393 for 7 on the opening day after 96 overs.